Hello, welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. And I'm so excited to be back in the house with my dear friend Pixie. Hi, Pixie. How are you today?
Hello.
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 I'm glad you came back. I feel like our conversations have been so great here on the podcast, as well as, our regular, friendship conversations. And I love having your voice and your wisdom here. And I'm so excited to introduce this topic to our listeners. And if it's new to them, I invite you to just really stick through to the end so you can get a sense of the whole topic. And for those of you that are familiar with our topic, which is tapping today, then I hope this kind of enriches your experience of it. And Pixie, thanks for coming and sharing your own experience and wisdom with us around tapping.
Yeah, thanks, Laurel. When you told me or asked me to do one on tapping, I pretty much jumped off my chair because this one is so dear to me. It's been an amazing tool in my life, and I don't know of too many people that are introduced to this tool and get the technique that don't benefit from it. It's one of those things. It's just one of those wonderful miracle gifts out there. At least it was for me,
Yep.
um, and gave me relief
Yeah.
in many different levels, especially
Mhm.
as I did it more and more. So,
Yeah.
I think it's important to maybe make a couple comments on this. Again, I love I love this topic, and I could probably talk way too long on it.
Me too.
But I do think there's some background stuff I think that people probably need to know. First of all, what's the official name?
Yes.
And it's people refer to it as EFT. It's really an emotional freedom technique, and
Yeah.
those words are so powerful
Okay.
because it is a
Exactly that.
physical
Yeah.
it yeah it's a physical technique, so
Yeah.
you can do it in the now,
Yeah.
that touches on emotions, which we all know are so integrated with our physical wellness. And I love it because, first of all, it's neuroscience based. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yep.
it's a science technique that works. Its original source, is the Chinese. It's kind of like, almost like an acupuncture, but it's an acupressure
Yep.
technique. So it's been around.
It's been around. So interesting, Pixie. I was introduced to this when I was doing my master's degree back in, or before I started my master's degree. So I started my master's degree in 1997. And I remember this really, I can anchor into it so specifically because it was one of the first classes that I took while I was doing my master's. And we got to do a project on an alternative therapy. And I chose EFT to talk to the class about, and nobody really knew about it. So that was 1997. That's 24 years ago. Is that 24 years ago, right? And and since then, it has become very well researched, very well studied in the Western world, and there's plenty of data out there to prove that it works and why it works. And the referral to Chinese medicine, I think one of the reasons it grabbed me and I really wanted to do it as my project was because by then I had already been studying Tai Chi and Chinese medicine and teaching Tai Chi. And I knew that it was connected with this idea of, your vital life force flowing through you and the acupressure points. And I loved that it was an empowering technique that you could do on your own for self-healing, just like Chinese, just like Tai Chi. Tai Chi is self-healing, self-regulating tool, and this gives such powerful, quick results when you do it and you stay with it and you experience it. And how great to have a tool like that in your back pocket for healing. Isn't it
Oh
amazing?
yeah,
It's
and
amazing.
and Yeah, so I mean, it's, and also what I meant by it's been around, I mean, it's been around for,
Mhm.
thousands and thousands of years in the Eastern culture.
Right.
Um, I mean, it's been practiced by, many of the world renowned mentors and gurus. But so there's also, this new field of energy psychology, and so it brings in that,
Yeah.
too. And I think that's probably where we should go next, in that, what is it? I mean, uh, the basics, and you know this better than me, is that, emotions are just energy in motion,
Mhm.
if you're lucky.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they
I
they
had
get
a lot of
stuck.
trapped energy that needed some tapping. That's why it was a real good tool for me.
Yeah, so that energy gets stuck.
Yeah.
And the premise is that it gets stuck in these kind of like 8 areas of your body that hold the energy. And this technique just frees that energy out of these points.
Yeah.
And
Allows it to
um
flow again and moves it, right? So it can do
yeah, because if it doesn't,
and release.
then we get sick.
Right.
And ultimately, I think long term it can actually, create some long lasting disease. So anyway, EFT just kind of is a technique to move that blocked energy in those kind of 8 pressure points of the body, and moves it out. I like it too, Laurel, and I think it's important to kind of just say this before we go into the technique, and that is that when I first learned it, I thought it was a technique just for short term. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling anxious right now. I can tap. Oh, and you move the anxiety through the body, and you feel, relief. This technique also can be used for um, past trauma, past wounds, past energy that is held in the body for years and decades,
That's
and and can move that
right.
out,
Right.
that we don't even know, so
It's there.
unconsciously, subconsciously, we didn't even know was there. So, once you can kind of get the technique down, you can use it to deal with, childhood wounding, childhood trauma, childhood memories, or
Right.
memories 5 years ago.
Right.
So
Right.
I
And
think that's,
that's really important. And I think that how we know that how do we know that it's there? How we know it's there, or how we discover that it's there, is we get triggered and we start to feel an emotion in the moment, and that's how we can discover, the thread of it, so to speak, right? Something triggers it in the moment, so you've got this kind of small whatever version of the experience, could be big, but usually the thing that triggered it is something that's triggering the emotion that's stored, right? It's the same emotion that got stored when we were traumatized, when we were wounded, when we were younger, or in the past, right? And so the momentary experience triggers the energy that's stored in there,
yep,
right? By mirroring a small thing that's similar to the energy. And now we know, oh, hey, time to use EFT, right? Time to tap, because we can potentially release enormous amounts of stored traumatic energy.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it can definitely be a long-term tool too.
Mhm.
But the good news is it's fast acting, and
Yes.
it can bring immediate relief to a stressful situation
Yeah,
in the present.
yeah,
The good news is it's you can do it
yep,
yourself,
yep.
and there's no known, in my reading, massive research on this actually, I've never read about a negative consequence
I
from
haven't
doing
either.
it. So
Yeah, I've never
it's
heard about it. Yeah,
pretty low risk.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the only risk, here's the only risk that I would say, Pixie, and it's a risk that I want to say, you know, theoretically isn't necessarily a risk, but what I would say to the new tapper, that right, the person that's first experiencing this, is that you could tap into really intense emotional experiences that now are looking for you to discharge them, to release them. And so when we are tapping, you have the potential to like really get in a very intense emotional state. And so the risk is, are you comfortable and are you ready? And do you have whatever support you need around you, right, to go to let yourself move through that experience? And if you haven't had a lot of um, support and help, and you're on your own, and you know you have a traumatic background, and you might have a lot of bad things stored up in there, old sadness, trauma, whatever, pain, anger associated with it, that to do it alone, the risk would be that you feel like you don't have the support that you need when the emotional experience starts surfacing. And so that would be the only maybe warning label I'd put on it for a new user. If you're like, wow, I can do this and I'll get rid of all this old trauma and whatever, just use it with care and perhaps consider getting some support here and there along the way. That would be my only
Yeah,
warning. Yeah.
I put three exclamations behind all that.
Yeah.
Um, Especially when you tap specifically on a childhood memory that you think might be stored. Those are the ones generally that'll bring tears
Yeah.
down my cheeks.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah, and
release.
so I think, I think that's a really good point.
Mm.
Um, so I don't know. Do you want to get in and kind of show what it is?
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit more about what we're doing and then we'll actually demonstrate it, okay?
Okay.
We're doing a couple things. One thing that we're doing is I like to think of it too, that what we're doing is in kind of a really beautiful beginning way, we are starting to retell a little bit about a story that is more empowering. And so, how that happens is really in the very first setup statement. And the very first setup statement, the thing that we say 3 times when we begin the cycle of tapping, is even though I feel, and then you fill in the blank with whatever you're experiencing, I deeply and completely accept myself. And you say that 3 times. Now, the reason it's kind of retelling the story and reforming the story in your mind is usually when we're traumatized, it's got nothing to do with deeply and completely accepting ourselves. It's just a horrible feeling or a horrible experience. And we're scared and we probably feel alone and frightened and all kinds of stuff. And as we begin this tapping process, we are mentally beginning to reform a story that reminds us that there's a part of ourselves that does deeply and completely accept ourselves. And we're asking that part to come forth and be a part of this experience. It's like drawing on the original self-love that is in there in your being to be with you for this experience as you go through this healing time. And for me, that's one of the empowering things too, is because we're really inviting ourselves to remember that some part of us has always and will always deeply and completely accept ourselves, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful, Laurel. And that setup statement is really key. It it takes some thought and preparation to get that kind of right to make the most of your tapping experience.
Yeah.
Um, what I always say is you need to figure out what the most pressing emotion and issue is,
Yeah.
and go through kind of like a series. I go through a series of questions for myself. um, you know, what am I feeling? Okay. I'm feeling really anxious right now. Yeah. Okay. So, what happened? Oh, okay. And we can use, I can this just happened to me, so I'm just going
Yeah,
to use this as an
that's great. And
example.
we can use it as an example through the whole thing. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, this just happened. So yeah, I went through this with a friend, never done tapping, and so I said, okay, well let's do our pre-work. And by the way, this pre-work can happen almost
Immediate. Yeah.
instantaneously. That don't it doesn't have to be an hour session, but
You have to go get your
um,
journal and da da da
so
da.
it's basically, three questions. What am I feeling? What happened? Who was involved? And kind of what value it touches. So this will help, I think, clarify. And I said something like, okay, so what are you feeling? Oh, I'm really anxious. I'm really anxious right now. Oh, okay. So what happened? Well, my credit card is at the limit, and I don't know how to pay it off. and and it's like, okay, so you're anxious over money. You're anxious that you won't be able to pay it off. I just kind of repeated what she said. She goes, yeah, I'm just really scared. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just really scared of not being able to pay it off, and what's going to happen. I said, okay, so you're scared. So that's a little bit of a higher pressing issue here, right? I said, so you have some fear over this. You're scared of not being able to pay this off. Yeah, I'm really scared, and I'm so pissed off. Oh, okay, what? Now you're pissed off. You're angry. Well, yeah, because my husband used the credit card and he put all these charges on it without even telling me. And I can't even believe he did that. Well, now we've just moved to anger.
Right.
Okay.
And
We
a whole
went
bunch of
from,
and a whole bunch of stuff behind the anger, right?
well,
Yeah.
which is what came out, right?
Yeah.
So now we just started in a pretty calm voice with, yeah, I'm just really feeling anxious, to, yeah, and I am so pissed off.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so now we're at anger and we're really angry, and that's starting to get and feel a little raw. She goes, well, wouldn't you be pissed off? I mean, it's totally disrespectful. And I can't even believe he did it. He like lied. And now we're getting into some deep values.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that pre-work, that conversation
Yeah.
set it up.
Yeah.
We had the most pressing emotion. We now know what happened, the pressing issue,
Yeah.
and she was in it.
Yeah. And
She's
that's the
in it.
best, that is the best way to elicit the most fruitful tapping experience, because if you
Exactly.
can get the full emotion, or a big emotion to arise within you, you're actually feeling it,
Right.
experiencing it, the energy is there. That's when you're going to get really good result, because you've already set it in motion. You've set the energy in
Exactly.
motion, and now we can start clearing and working with it, right?
That's right. And
Yeah.
I knew when she said, and I feel so disrespected because he lied to me. I knew when we hit the value
Yeah.
that was triggered in her,
Yeah.
that she was really owning this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we set up a setup statement, right? And
Yeah.
the
Well,
setup
hold on.
statement,
Before you go there, I want to say to our listeners that if you are listening in and you're thinking, huh, that sounds like maybe I don't know if I'd be able to get to the next part. Or if you try tapping and you're using it on anxiety, right? And I would just want to put my 2 cents in on what I think about anxiety, right? So number one, anxiety it's prevalent in our culture. We have so many reasons to feel anxious. There's a lot to go and to talk about. We could do a whole session on anxiety, but anxiety tends to be the result of a suppression of emotion. Like, we get anxious because we're not feeling our emotions directly. If we could feel our emotions directly and experience our life in a much more direct way, generally we're not going to experience the anxiety. So the anxiety can be the part that triggers you into something's going on here and there's more underneath it, right? And that's a beautiful example of that, Pixie. I'm so glad that was our example because I think that's a very pertinent to our listeners and to today. When we're feeling anxious, there's something else there. And so we want to take the time and do the digging to get to what else is there. Yeah.
Right. And Laurel, if we had just stopped there, if I had just been with my friend and stopped there and said, okay, all right, we'll tap on anxiety. You're feeling anxious today. Okay. Even though, I am really feeling anxious um, about my credit card bill, I deeply and completely love myself, accept myself, and forgive myself. We could have done that.
Mm.
I believe in my personal experience with this that she might have felt better, but I think because we got to the most pressing emotion, the real raw kind of behind the scenes of that anxiety, she had more success
Yeah,
in the tapping.
I agree. And
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that can happen when we're tapping, and particularly when you're starting with something like anxiety that feels like a little, I'm not really sure what I'm feeling kind of place. And sometimes we can't get right to what we're feeling. So we could even start with that. What happens with it is that if you stay with it and you really are sticking with the process and you're telling yourself the thing that triggered it, right? So even though anxious that I can't pay my credit card bill, normally there's a good chance that as you're tapping it, the tapping moves into anger. It goes from the anxiety to the anger because the tapping, hopefully, if it's beginning to do the release work, will start to bring you into the more intense state and then you
Yeah.
get in touch with the anger, right? And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
it could be that. It
yeah,
could it could work in the reverse.
yeah,
I always believe that the more pre-work probably
I
that
agree with you. I totally
yeah,
agree with you. I think that if you can get to that place where you're really in the space of an intense emotion, then you know that the work is right there to be accessed, right?
right.
And so, if you're on your own and you're starting with anxiety because you can't seem to get anywhere else, just let yourself play around a little bit, like stay with it, talk yourself what stay with that issue that triggered it to begin with. And then also, um, you know, a lot of times as we're beginning this process is, and you've taken yourself through a few rounds, which we're going to do now, is you might find that the emotion gets much stronger before it starts to diminish. And so there's a building before there's a release. And that can absolutely be a part of the experience.
Well,
Yeah.
that's funny you say that because, most of the time you do feel better, but not all the time.
Yeah. And
Uh,
right away.
sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes you go through this and you're actually feeling worse. And that is my red flag to say, hmm, I didn't nail the
Yeah.
most pressing.
Right.
I didn't get deep enough. But Laurel, and I don't know if you do this, but so once I get the setup, like in this case,
Mhm.
even though I'm feeling angry, really angry right now. I deeply, I got my setup station and my setup statement. Before I do that, I rate my
Yes.
anger.
Yes. That's
So
that.
I pick I numerically do a
Yeah.
number, and mostly because then when I'm done my first round, I can say, okay, I feel better. I actually think it's a 5 now,
Right.
whereas I might have started at an 8. It's a really good way to kind of keep track um,
Yeah.
of the process. It puts almost like a practical edge on it.
Yeah.
It takes,
And I
yeah,
think it's like brings you into the space of it's interesting because when you're tapping, you're doing kind of it's an emotional release. You're working with your nervous system. And then there's the mental aspect of it where you're doing the setup statement. And as you're doing the rating, it also brings you back up into your mind, right? Into the mental process so that you're again connecting with that part of yourself that's more whole, that can look at you from a little bit of a distance while you're doing it and go, do I feel worse? Do I feel better? I was started at let's say 10 was the worst intensity I ever felt it. I started at a 9 and now I feel, oh, maybe I'm down to an 8, So you're kind of connecting almost with the logic, the right, the left brain, and then the right brain is doing more of this emotional, creative, energetic process and so it's like, again, the aspects of tapping are so beautiful, that we're accessing these parts of ourselves in the experience. It's very rich. Yeah. Yeah.
It is. And actually, it is left brain, right brain, mostly in technique, but it's also kind of that frontal lobe limbic
Yes.
system, fight,
Yes.
flight, and the three parts of your brain that this tapping actually taps into.
Yep.
Um, and so that's where the neuroscience also part comes in to this and why it's so effective. But
Yeah.
um, so anyway, yeah, we should probably then
Keep
talk about the release statements
Yeah.
and the pressure points, and then
So
we
the
can.
beginning of the tapping round is that release statement, and we say it 3 times, and then we're working with what we call, I call it the karate chop point. What do you call it?
I call it karate
Yeah,
chop too.
yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of the tapping term for it. And that's on the side of your hand. And you're really tapping on the side of your hand with the fingers of your other hand. And I always say when I'm describing it, when you're tapping on the side of your hand, you're looking somewhere in there, there's a little more, a place where it's a little more tender than anywhere else. And that's the place where you want the pressure to be focused. That's really the spot that's going to
Right.
activate the movement of energy and the movement of your life.
Yeah, I generally, and I always pick my left, but it doesn't matter
Doesn't
which
matter what,
hand.
it's bilateral. So in
Yeah,
Chinese medicine, the acupressure points on the body are bilateral. When you affect one side, you affect the whole
right.
system. And so either hand, either way is perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, so I pick my left, and before I even say anything,
Hmm.
um, I just tap and feel
Breathe and feel.
the vibration through. I end up just feeling it down to my toes. I can feel it down through my thighs, my legs. I can feel it down all the way in my toes. Before I even start, I just actually, we forgot one key thing. Maybe you do this. I know you do this because I know you, Laurel. Um, I I I I do the other physical thing that you can do for emotional, and that is I take three what I call 4-7-8 breaths, where most people know, right, that when you're breathing, and especially when you're anxious or angry or whatever we are, right, we're breathing just into the top part of our lung, and that's a very shallow part of our lung. So we need to calm our body down and tell our mind that we're going to breathe deep. And so we move the air down into the bottom of the lungs, and that actually calms the mind,
Yeah.
significantly even before tapping. So I use the 4-7-8, where I breathe in 4, I hold it 7, and then I release with 8 slowly. I don't know if you have any
I think
particular.
I would say for anyone, you know, uh, trying that out is just beware, be careful. Like holding for 7 and releasing for 8 might feel like a lot for a beginner who hasn't done a lot. I know, look, you meditate all the time. You've done a lot of breath work, Pixie, so you're okay with this. But for anybody like new to the experience of breath work, you might want to start with 4, hold for as many as feel comfortable, and then release for more than 4, if you can do 5, right? And then build yourself up to that 4, 7, 8. I think that um, everybody's different in terms of what their capacity is. And if you've been breathing shallowly, it's very difficult to get a big, long breath. It
It
takes a
is.
while to get there. It took me years to get to my breath down into my belly and down there low.
It is.
Yeah.
You're right about that. And I'm so glad you brought that up. Maybe, and also some people aren't counters. Again, I'm an engineer, so I tend to love numbers and everything I do, right? So, but some people aren't counters. I would just say you're right to the person that doesn't really think about this. Just try to feel the breath
Yeah.
going deeper
Yeah.
than when it did the time before.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
and
Yeah.
and don't worry about getting it down to the end of the lungs and all that. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just and just but take three deep, and
Yeah.
I call them belly breaths, but take three just deep, you know
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're
as
whatever
much
you
as you
can. That's right.
yeah,
In there. Yeah.
because that does tell the mind. It's amazing how quickly your body connects with your mind to say, oh, okay, we're not in fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
we're
I know.
we're calm now. Yeah,
It's
we're
breath work is incredible, incredible.
right.
I know when I was teaching Tai Chi, my very first class with all my students, the very first lesson I gave was how to take a long, relaxed, deep breath and what you should feel, what you would feel if you were breathing deeply into your body. And when I was done with that 10-minute lesson, I said, you guys got your money's worth for this whole 10-week class, whether you stay or not, or you like Tai Chi. If you just practice this kind of breathing, you've changed your life. And it's true because you cannot experience anxiety, tension, resistance if you are breathing deeply into your body. It is
Yeah, you're right. They're not.
transformational.
Yeah, that it's impossible. It's physically mind. The mind won't do that.
That's right. That's right. Okay,
Yeah.
so now here we are. We've done our setup statement. We've got 3 setup statements. We are on the karate chop point. Every time you're tapping at your karate, any point that we're tapping, we want to make sure that we are wrapping, tapping, and feeling that kind of tender spot 5 to 7 times as we go around the different points. So that's how I learned it. How did you learn it? Did you learn it?
Yep, me
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And one thing too, Laurel, I mean, they can go to YouTube and they can see a lot of different
Yes.
people do this.
I
You
know.
know, some people do it really fast.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't. I kind of hang. Like I'll say, even though
Mm.
I'm feeling so angry, I deeply and completely love and accept and forgive myself.
Mm.
Even though I'm feeling rage, I tend, but you'll go to YouTube and you'll have some people go, even though I feel angry, I deeply love myself. Even though I feel angry, I mean, there's
Yeah.
just, you got to find
Got a
your,
variety. Find your ones. There's so many out there. I'm going to put a link to my tapping video that I have out there just because I know that it's legit. And but scroll around, look for people. I love Nick Ortner.
exactly.
I love his sister. I don't remember her name. They're both the Ortner people are just wonderful in the tapping world. They've done a lot of research, done a lot of written books, all kinds of good stuff. So I know his sister, Jessica, that's her name, has done a lot of work with eating disorders and problems around addiction and tapping. And so they're great resources for that. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
So I just wanted to say there's a cadence that will resonate
For
with
you.
each person.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
and you just have to kind of find
Yeah.
find the one that works. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so if you're listening to the podcast and you're not watching it on YouTube with Pixie and I right now, which is on YouTube. So if you want to go back and find it on YouTube so that you can see us while we're doing this, that will be obviously helpful. If not, you'll see it on my YouTube video. You can find it there. But we're going to describe where the points are. If you feel like a little confused and you're unsure, you're going to have to look at a video. I would suggest, that's the best way to really see where the points are so you know and feel like you're doing it correctly, right? Yeah. So, Pixie, you want to take it through?
Um, yeah, sure. Well, first, just that there's 8 points. Um, and again, you want to kind of tap 5 to 7 times on each. Um, so the first one, and again, some people use two hands.
Mhm.
Um, I tend to use my right hand, my right two fingers. So the first one is right in between the eyebrows, right there at the top of the nose. And you, again, play around with it. You'll feel when you hit it, just this kind of sensation is really for me.
If
Um,
you don't, it's okay. Just do it anyway. That's what I you'll develop a sensitivity to it by doing it, right? And at the beginning,
yeah,
so many things are going on. Oftentimes we feel self-conscious or silly or whatever. And so you might be detached from your ability to really sense into it, but you'll get there. You will sense it eventually if you don't.
yeah, I agree with you, Laurel. I think too, for the first time, people, they're kind of skepticism, like, what? Really? I'm gonna tap in between my eyes, and
I know.
there's an element of doubt there. So
Yeah,
that's a little bit of resistance. Yeah.
it's
So
okay.
the second one is right here at the corner of the eye. Again, I tend to use my right hand, my right two fingers, and my right eye.
I do too.
The third one is right here, in down below the nose, above the upper lip. And the fourth one is below the lower lip, right above the chin. The fifth one is my big one. Just happens to be one that just sends vibrations
Yeah.
through. And
Yeah.
I use both hands.
I usually
It's the
do too.
it's the collarbone.
Yeah.
For me, this is
Incredibly
quite the
powerful.
sensation.
Yeah.
So I end up bringing my left hand down with me on this one.
Hmm.
Then I go back to my right hand, and it's under the arm. And I have to say, Laurel, I don't know for you, but this one is my least favorite point.
Same for
I
me.
have the,
Most people don't really, yeah, aren't into it.
I don't feel very much on this,
Hmm. Have you played
at
around
all.
with where you're hitting to, Pixie? Have you messed
Oh,
around with
yeah, I just think it's a block.
it? I would
And
try to mess around, even go a little bit lower, go lower than you think. Like just mess around and see if you can find a little tender spot. Really look
yeah,
for that, yeah, and see if you can because you are sensitive to it. I'd play with it a little bit more. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that, but I always have a lot of clothes on. I can't really
Yeah,
get
I
to,
know. Yeah.
it's a logistical issue. um, and then the eighth one is just phenomenal for me personally. It's the crown, tapping the crown. Some people I see you're doing like a circle.
I do.
Um,
Yep,
oh, sometimes I do a circle. Sometimes I just tap.
at the top.
Um, and I always do the full seven on the crown. The crown for me is the release.
Yeah, yep, I do too.
Um,
So we missed
yeah,
one. We missed one. So there's middle here, outside of the
yeah,
eye, under the eye.
yeah. Oh, I forgot under the
Yeah,
eye.
under the eye,
Yeah,
under the nose,
yeah,
at the chin, under the lip, collarbone,
yeah,
under here. Now, here's how I remember it for people that are new to this, and it's like, oh, how am I supposed to remember this, right? This is how I remember it, and I love this because I feel like it really works, right? Is to me, it's a backwards question mark.
yeah. Me too.
Right?
Yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right down, right? And then under your arm, top of your head, right? So it's a question mark
yeah,
from your face down to your collarbone. Here's the
yeah,
exclamation point, and then, down, up. And I feel like that really works. And I love that I don't really think of it as 8 places where I tap, but that's another way to anchor it in there for yourself when you're beginning, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you make sure you get them all in there, right? So while we're doing those tapping on those points, we're not saying the setup statement anymore for our listeners. Now you're just saying whatever the word or description was you used when you said, even though I feel, and then that fill in the blank, right? So afraid I can't pay my credit card bill, so pissed, so pissed, right? Like whatever the feeling is, that's what we're saying. I'm so pissed. I feel so angry. Oh my God, the rage is surging through my body, right? Whatever you're feeling, then you're tapping as you go through the rest of the tapping points, right?
Yeah, and what I do, Laurel, is on the crown, and this may just be a pixie tweak, but it works. I'll say let's say it's anger. Oh, anger, anger, anger. This rage I'm feeling right now, this anger. And I go through,
Yeah.
and then on the crown I say, and it's released. This anger is released. And I actually feel it lift
Pushing.
when I say the word release.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if a lot of people do that,
I don't know.
but
I don't know.
for me, it's a verbal affirmation of the energy of anger in motion. So,
Yeah, encouraging it to release, really affirming that you're releasing it. And
right.
I think that's beautiful. I think that, this is the one of the beautiful things about this tool is once you've used it and you feel a result and you like it as a tool for your, beautiful work toolbox, you will begin to use it in a more free-flowing way. And I would love to come back and do another short video on like tapping two and how we can use it in a more free-flowing way, because I do feel like once you get your rhythm with it and it's established in you, I always think of like emotional freedom technique as the possibility of all the release that you can do, and then the possibility of encouraging yourself to all that you can go forward into, like what the
Yeah.
emotions that you want to embrace and encourage and bring yourself into that state. And so, we don't. I don't usually share that with clients until we've done some work and everybody, unless you're really familiar with tapping, like it's great to use it for that, but I really feel like you want to use it first for what it was intended for, and it's in its purest form, and this is the form. Use it for the release, and then allow yourself to take yourself into that space of, I want to feel free of this trauma. I want to feel free in my life. I don't want to feel encumbered by this. It's like it's being able to use it into adopting like a higher level of existence in the world, really is how I think.
Right. And Laurel, the way I achieve that, and I would offer it up to the listeners, is after I tap, especially if I'm tapping on something that's got a lot of baggage to it, um, I journal.
Yeah.
And whatever comes out
Yeah.
uh, after the tapping, and usually that gets into what you were just saying. It
Mhm.
leads me to the next
Yeah.
space that I'm going to go into because I feel cleansed.
And free.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that journaling after tapping is good. But the other thing I wanted to say too, Laurel, that kind of feeds off what you said. Um, so you can get so good at this that you actually don't even need to physically tap.
Do it. That's right. That's right.
And and um and so you can be on the train, or you can be, I did this a couple times before a meeting, sitting outside the meeting room. People were kind of gathering. I was in my own space, and I tapped without touching anything because I didn't want to draw attention to myself.
I'm so glad
But
you
that,
did that. Yeah. Yeah. Super.
and that's free flow tapping.
Yeah.
That's connecting. Don't get me wrong, the sensation and the vibration and the feeling that comes from the physical tapping
Yeah.
surpasses that, like what I would call mental tapping. But
Yeah.
you can do it
Yeah.
without the rigor that we're going through right now.
It's kind of like I used to tell my Tai Chi students, if you're having trouble falling asleep, in your mind, take yourself through the form. right? Imagine yourself doing the form, and you get into this beautiful relaxed state just from the mental process. But you really are ultimately, if your body and the muscle memory is in there with the form, you actually start to get that benefit. You are opening up, the channels
Yeah,
and letting the energy flow, right? Just from the mental experience of taking, because don't forget, what we're doing is moving energy, and we can move energy with our mind. we, we
that's right.
we can do that,
That's
it's
that's
so
right.
powerful. Yeah.
And I still think it's important to focus on the pressure points because
Yes.
that is where, our
Yeah.
energy gets trapped.
Yep.
Um, but it's fascinating that we can do it without actually,
Touching.
tapping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Pixie, let's do a quick round in its totality so that
Okay.
our listeners can actually see the whole thing, and especially if they're viewing on YouTube, they see exactly what it is. We'll do it as if we were doing a whole round. I'll let you lead. I'm just going to do it with you. And then just describe, let's do if you're okay with it, like let's do 3 rounds and do the whole, start with a setup statement and take it through the rating, right? Right. So you pause, you
Right.
breathe, you rate it, and then,
Yeah. So this may be a slight modification or difference between you and I. I'll do the breath and I'll go through it once
mhm.
and I'll rate it.
Yeah.
And if it comes down, then I know, okay, this is good. I'm on my most pressing issue, and I just go through this again.
Okay.
I
Okay.
I don't do the setup. I'll go through the 8 points again,
Okay.
and I'll rate that again, and maybe it'll come down to a 4. And then my goal with my tapping is to get 2 or below.
Mhm.
And so I might do again
Yeah.
the 8 points.
Yeah. Good. Nice.
And then if I get a 2 or below, I say, I'm grateful. I might go journal, or I might go out and work in the yard,
Right.
But if what happens to me, if I do this and I go through it once, and let's say I started out as an 8, and after I'm a 9, then I do this again.
Good.
I may do it on the same emotion, or I might go deeper and say, okay, Pixie, wait a minute here. What is it that you're really feeling? If and it has happened to me. It
Yeah.
has happened. I have to say it doesn't happen often,
Yeah.
but
I love
I'll
that.
go and I'll redo the whole thing.
Yeah.
And if nothing happens again, I stop.
Yeah.
I walk away.
Yeah.
I hey, this isn't working for me today, or right now. I'm obviously in need of something else, and but I have to say that's never happened to me. But it can happen, and I would say don't get discouraged if it
Right.
does happen.
Right. Right. And the thing I would add to that is, for anyone practicing tapping, and for yourself that you don't feel like you deeply and completely accept yourself, you can't say the setup statement too much. I I feel that as you're tapping, because we generally in our culture have an unfortunate condition for many of us where we don't deeply and completely accept ourselves and love ourselves. And so if you feel that you have some work to do in that area, I would encourage you to feel free to use the setup statement over and over again and tap while you're doing it. tap on that karate chop place because it's going to start to release and open and allow some energy to move. And you will get to a place where you'll remember that you do, and you feel much more comfortable saying that set up.
Well, or come down a notch in that statement.
Yeah,
If you don't feel like you
yeah,
want to say I deeply and completely
yeah.
love myself. I mean, Laurel, I couldn't say
Right,
that 5 years ago. Okay.
right.
You can
You can
say,
say,
come down a notch and say,
I accept
even
myself.
though I'm feeling so angry right now, I accept how I feel.
Yeah, yeah,
Perfect.
right, right,
Perfect.
exactly.
I mean, that's it. You don't have to, I mean, I want everybody to love themselves, but I
Me
mean,
too.
don't say anything inauthentic. Don't say anything that makes you kind of squeal, get a little
Yeah,
squirmy.
right,
Just say, hey, I accept how I feel.
right.
Um,
Beautiful.
or you could say, here's one too. You could come down a notch and you can say, um, even though I'm feeling so angry, I'm willing
To
to
accept.
accept myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Just show intent.
Yeah, I'm
you know,
working on accepting myself. Whatever
yeah,
language resonates,
yeah,
you don't feel a deep resistance to it, right? Yeah, that's really the goal because we don't want to feel the feeling of resisting while we're in the process, and that's really what I feel like you want to feel like I'm doing this and it feels authentic to where I am. Yeah,
yeah.
my
Because
body
if
will
you
accept.
introduce you
Yeah.
introduce any inauthenticity, you're going to have resistance.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I'll let you cough for a minute if you need to. I'm just going to take everybody through that sequence once, okay? Just so that we've established that before we sign off and say goodbye. Okay? So you begin with you got triggered, you have a feeling, you do the work that Pixie described at the beginning, what am I feeling here? If you feel like you got the feeling and it's really up there and it's intense, you're ready to go. If you're feeling anxious, you might do some more digging. If you're feeling a mild form of it, you might do a little more questioning, like Pixie suggested. We'll put those questions in the notes. And then once you feel like you're there, okay, you can begin with a rating. I feel like a 10 right now. I'm off the charts, or I feel like, oh, it's intense. I'm an 8. Okay. Begin the karate chop point. You start with a karate chop point. Even though I feel angry as heck right now, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I'm feeling angry and the blood is rising in my head, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I feel this intense anger, I deeply and completely accept myself. And now you're up here at the inner eyebrow, and then out to the outside of the eye, and then you're under the eye. This anger, this intense feeling that's pounding through my body, this rage that I'm feeling right now to the chest, and then under the arm, this anger. This anger is just taking me over, and then up to the crown of the head. This anger, and as Pixie suggested, you could say, I'm releasing this anger right now. I'm letting this anger go. And then take your hands down and breathe. Tune into how your body feels as you take a couple breaths and notice how do you feel? What's the rating? Did your rating of your intensity of your feelings start to diminish, start to increase? Rate it, and then you can go back into it. You can go back to the setup statement, or as Pixie suggested, if you feel like you're ready to just go right up, you can go up to the eye and do that round again. And we repeat that round as many times as you want to. There is no prescription of how many rounds are the right amount of rounds or what's the right. I often say to clients, if you're using it out in the world and you don't want people to see what you're doing and you don't want to be noticed, you can just stand and kind of tap on your chest for a minute. You can, kind of brush your head up here a little bit. You can be under your arm. People don't even know what you're doing, right? You can be like scratching your eyebrow. You can tap in public and nobody will know if you get creative with it. So it's a beautiful tool. And oh, Pixie, I cannot thank you enough for coming and talking to me. We could talk for hours on tapping, couldn't we?
Oh, I mean, I just think it's a gift.
it
Yeah,
it
it's
is
a gift.
a gift. It is a
Yeah.
gift. And then one of the best tools that you can put in your toolbox as far as I'm concerned for the beautiful work, because you just empower yourself with something that can has endless opportunities for clearing and redirecting, how you look at life. It's really, really beautiful.
Well, yeah, and Laurel, I think it's important getting back, to the example that I went through my friend, with it helped her incredibly, right? Now, that didn't pay her credit card bill,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And it didn't
Good point.
solve,
Yeah.
well, and it didn't
Yep. It's
solve
true.
the conflict with the fact that her husband lied and disrespected her,
Right.
okay?
But
But she felt calm, grounded, and empowered to be able to handle the
right.
situation.
That's it.
And I think that's an important point. EFT is not gonna solve any
Right.
problems per se, but it's gonna allow you to do that what we do, the beautiful inner work, so that then you can handle that external conflict.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. When we know this is a great mini lesson embedded in this, and probably one of the most beautiful things that people can remember is when you're triggered, when you're in an intense emotional state, it's like you're disconnected from clear thinking. And you're not going to solve your problem in that state. And so that's the beauty of tapping is you get to clear yourself and hopefully come into a calm state, release emotion, be able to look
right,
at the situation with new eyes and hopefully an empowered voice to enter into it and do what needs to be done to handle it, right? Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Thank you,
good. Well,
Nancy. Thank you, thank
thank
you, thank
you.
you. Come back
Yeah,
and do a part two with me sometime, okay?
I'd love to do that.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
All right. Bye for now,
Okay,
everybody.
bye.